I would like you to please relate your experience with Scientology, because you ran into them really early on in your counseling, and it was a fascinating and kind of freaky, scary story. What happened?
Okay, right. I didn't know that groups like this, especially groups that call themselves churches, could behave this way. But I was a youngin. I had just.
When was this actually? Not to put a age on you or anything.
No, I don't mind. I just turned 50. I'm very proud. I was, let's see, I'd just been licensed. So this was 1992, 93. This was about a year after I was licensed. Someone came to my office, a woman who was in Scientology, and she was very scared and said that she needed some help and that no one knew she was there. And she kept looking around my office to see if I had cameras, because I noticed her eyes were darting everywhere, and she was very jumpy too. Any noise that she heard, anyone opening and closing a door down the hallway, she was jumping. And I thought, wow, she's behaving to me like someone who's escaping some sort of abusive relationship. She feels that she's in some sort of danger. And I said, tell me about why you're here. And she said, I belong to a church, I think. And I said, okay, tell me more about that. And she said, I'm not supposed to be here, and I'm not supposed to come to see a therapist. And are you going to put electrodes on my brain? That's what she asked me. Well, that was the first time I'd ever been asked that question. And I'm sure that most of the people in my field who do counseling have never been asked that question. But that was something she had been told was going to happen to her if she sought out counseling. And she said that she is in a group and she's being kept from coming home and visiting her family. She actually showed me that she had lost a lot of weight. She was working nonstop. She showed me a picture of herself just a year before where she had kind of rosy cheeks and seemed fine, and now she looked kind of ghost-like. And I offered her my support, and I'm here, and if you want to talk, and you don't have to feel scared of talking to me, and I'm here if you want to come again. Well, when she went back and had to report what she had done that day to her handlers in Scientology, she felt like they kept asking her. There was sort of this missing hour in her day where they didn't know where she was. And she was under so much pressure to say, and they weren't believing what she was telling them. And finally she said, okay, I went to go see this therapist, Rachel Bernstein. Well, then about a week later, had someone come in to see me, a man, who was asking me very leading questions. If I felt someone was in a group, if they were over 18, would I kidnap them? I mean, in retrospect, I know why he was asking me all these questions, to see if he could catch me doing something potentially illegal, and if I was doing deprogrammings and holding people against their will, etc. It was an odd, tense session, but he left afterwards, and then a few days later, I got a full transcript of that session. So he had been recording it, and I didn't know he was recording it. And it had a handwritten note at the top that said, just to let you know, we're watching and listening. And it was unbelievable because I felt like I had just been hit by a car. I had that sort of sudden burst of, like, my nerves were on end. And then that was it. That began sort of the cascade of getting a letter from the board that oversees my license, saying a formal complaint had been lodged against me and my license, that I was abusive, and that I was holding people against their will, and that I had done a whole host of things. I didn't know what they were, had to look up what they meant. And then there were two people who dressed up like members of the janitorial crew and got into my office and got into my files, and were calling clients saying that I was a whole variety of things, bad things. And this was all an orchestrated Scientology effort to discredit me, and also I think just to intimidate me, to have me stop doing what I was doing. The thing is, I wasn't doing anything. I was just sitting in my office listening to people talk about the pain that was being caused by Scientology to them, but I wasn't doing anything. But because I was a potential resource, and it might cause someone to think that they could leave and have somebody to talk to, I was a threat to Scientology. And then I had some thugs, these two private eyes, Scientology private eyes, who started following me around and would be right outside the door of the clinic where I worked and would follow me to my car. They tried to get my home address. They called all, and they tried to find lots of creative ways to try to get my personal information from the office staff. Wound up knowing where I lived at the time and parked a car with darkened windows out in front of my house. And it went on for quite some time. And I thought to myself, what the hell? What did I do? I can't even think about what I said to some woman who seemed panicked, I'm here if you want to talk. Was it? But they went after me, and I had to use my savings to hire an attorney. I mean, I had very little savings at the time. I was just starting out. And I had to clear my name. And after my name was cleared, I spoke to someone at the board who said, this is what they do. And we couldn't tell you at the time because we had to follow protocol and go and have you really, fill out affidavits and show that you hadn't done any of these things. And then, our hands were tied at the time that you were under investigation. But now that you've been cleared, let me just say, almost everyone who does the work that you do has gone through this and then some by Scientology.
Wow. So they actually were aware of the fact that this kind of harassment and stalking was going on a routine basis.
Yeah, they were absolutely aware of it and were following their job by not telling me at the time. And I thought, okay, now I have to make a choice. Do I want to deal with this? Is this what I signed up for? I mean, right. I just want to help people, and what is this? And can it get worse? And can they get really physically dangerous towards me? And there was something that happened where I decided in my mind to see them as what they were at the time and still are to a great degree with certain people, but I saw them as bullies. And
that's right, that's exactly what they are.
And so I was raised in a family where you learn you don't let the bullies win. That's how they get away with it, and that's how the victims keep getting victimized. And so I thought, okay, if I'm going to dig my heels in, which is the opposite what they're hoping for me to do, because they're hoping I'm going to run for the hills, how do I do this safely? So I really did it in a way where I stayed under their radar as much as possible. And I didn't put together a website for myself until recently. And I didn't, I did media, but I never said Scientology's name, and I never used the word cult in association with Scientology, even if I was directly asked. I was very cautious, and just didn't want to deal with it, especially when I had young children. I wanted to have them be free from all of this kind of crazy stuff. But I know now that these private eyes are really bad guys, and I am lucky to be alive. I'm lucky that nothing horrible happened.